Hello and welcome back to the channel. In this video, we'll talk about Gustave Le Bon's Book 3, Part 2, Crowds Termed Criminal Crowds. Here's what we'll discuss in this video. Crowds termed criminal crowds? A crowd may be legally yet not psychologically criminal. The absolute unconsciousness of the acts of crowds. Various examples. Psychology of the authors of the September Massacres. Their reasoning, their sensibility, their ferocity, and their morality. Ready? Let's begin. Owing to the fact that crowds, after a period of excitement, enter upon a purely automatic and unconscious state in which they are guided by suggestion, it seems difficult to qualify them in any case as criminal. I only retain this erroneous qualification because it has been definitely brought into vogue by recent psychological investigations. Certain acts of crowds are assuredly criminal, if considered merely in themselves, but criminal in that case in the same way as the act of a tiger devouring a Hindu after allowing its young to maul him for their amusement. The usual motive of the crimes of crowds is a powerful suggestion, and the individuals who take part in such crimes are afterwards convinced that they have acted in obedience to duty, which is far from being the case with the ordinary criminal. The history of the crimes committed by crowds illustrates what precedes. The murder of Monsieur de Launay, the governor of the Bastille, may be cited as a typical example. After the taking of the fortress, the governor, surrounded by a very excited crowd, was dealt blows from every direction. It was proposed to hang him, to cut off his head, to tie him to a horse's tail. While struggling, he accidentally kicked one of those present. Someone proposed, and his suggestion was at once received with acclamation by the crowd, that the individual who had been kicked should cut the governor's throat. The individual in question, a cook out of work, whose chief reason for being at the Bastille was idle curiosity as to what was going on, esteems that since such is the general opinion, the action is patriotic, and even believes he deserves a medal for having destroyed a monster. With a sword that is lent him, he strikes the bared neck, but the weapon being somewhat blunt and not cutting, he takes from his pocket a small black-handled knife, and in his capacity of cook, he would be experienced in cutting up meat, successfully effects the operation. The working of the process indicated above is clearly seen in this example. We have obedience to a suggestion, which is all the stronger because of its collective origin, and the murderer's conviction that he has committed a very meritorious act, a conviction the more natural seeing that he enjoys the unanimous approval of his fellow citizens. An act of this kind may be considered crime legally but not psychologically. The general characteristics of criminal crowds are precisely the same as those we have met with in all crowds: openness to suggestion, credulity, mobility, the exaggeration of the sentiments good or bad, the manifestation of certain forms of morality, etc. We shall find all these characteristics present in a crowd which has left behind it in French history the most sinister memories, the crowd which perpetrated the September Massacres. In point of fact, it offers much similarity with the crowd that committed the St. Bartholomew massacres. I borrow the details from the narration of Monsieur Taine, who took them from contemporary sources. It is not known exactly who gave the order or made the suggestion to empty the prisons by massacring the prisoners. Whether it was Danton, as is probable, or another does not matter. The one interesting fact for us is the powerful suggestion received by the crowd charged with the massacre. The crowd of murderers numbered some 300 persons and was a perfectly typical heterogeneous crowd, with the exception of a very small number of professional scoundrels. It was composed in the main of shopkeepers and artisans of every trade, bootmakers, locksmiths, hairdressers, masons, clerks, messengers, etc. Under the influence of the suggestion received, they are perfectly convinced, as was the cook referred to above, that they are accomplishing a patriotic duty. They fill a double office, being at once judge and executioner, but they do not for a moment regard themselves as criminals. Deeply conscious of the importance of their duty, they begin by forming a sort of tribunal, and in connection with this act, the ingenuousness of crowds and their rudimentary conception of justice are seen immediately. In consideration of the large number of the accused, it is decided that, to begin with, the nobles, priests, officers, and members of the king's household, in a word, all the individuals whose mere profession is proof of their guilt, in the eyes of a good patriot, shall be slaughtered in a body, there being no need for a special decision in their case. The remainder shall be judged on their personal appearance and their reputation. In this way, the rudimentary conscience of the crowd is satisfied. It will now be able to proceed legally with the massacre, and to give free scope to those instincts of ferocity whose genesis I have set forth elsewhere, they being instincts which collectivities always have in them to develop to a high degree. These instincts, however, as is regularly the case in crowds, will not prevent the manifestation of other and contrary sentiments, such as a tender-heartedness often as extreme as the ferocity. They have the expansive sympathy and prompt sensibility of the Parisian working man. At the Abbaye, one of the federates, learning that the prisoners had been left without water for 26 hours, was bent on putting the jailer to death, and would have done so but for the prayers of the prisoners themselves. When a prisoner is acquitted by the improvised tribunal, everyone, guards and slaughterers included, embraces him with transports of joy and applauds frantically, after which the wholesale massacre is recommenced. During its progress, a pleasant gaiety never ceases to reign. There is dancing and singing around the corpses, and benches are arranged for the ladies, delighted to witness the killing of aristocrats. The exhibition continues, moreover, of a special description of justice. A slaughterer at the Abbaye having complained that the ladies placed at a little distance saw badly, and that only a few of those present had the pleasure of striking the aristocrats. The justice of the observation is admitted, and it is decided that the victims shall be made to pass slowly between two rows of slaughterers, who shall be under the obligation to strike with the back of the sword only so as to prolong the agony. At the prison de la Force, the victims are stripped stark naked and literally carved for half an hour, after which, when everyone has had a good view, they are finished off by a blow that lays bare their entrails. The slaughterers, too, have their scruples and exhibit that moral sense whose existence in crowds we have already pointed out. They refuse to appropriate the money and jewels of the victims, taking them to the table of the committees. Those rudimentary forms of reasoning, characteristic of the mind of crowds, are always to be traced in all their acts. Thus, after the slaughter of the 1,200 or 1,500 enemies of the nation, someone makes the remark, and his suggestion is at once adopted, that the other prisons, those containing aged beggars, vagabonds, and young prisoners, hold in reality useless mouths, of which it would be well on that account to get rid. Besides, among them there should certainly be enemies of the people, a woman of the name of Delarue, for instance, the widow of a poisoner. She must be furious at being in prison. If she could, she would set fire to Paris. She must have said so, she has said so. Another good riddance. The demonstration appears convincing, and the prisoners are massacred without exception, included in the number being some 50 children of from 12 to 17 years of age, who of course might themselves have become enemies of the nation, and of whom in consequence it was clearly well to be rid. At the end of a week's work, all these operations being brought to an end, the slaughterers can think of reposing themselves. Profoundly convinced that they have deserved well of their country, they went to the authorities and demanded a recompense. The most zealous went so far as to claim a medal. The history of the Commune of 1871 affords several facts analogous to those which precede. Given the growing influence of crowds and the successive capitulations before them of those in authority, we are destined to witness many others of a like nature. If you enjoyed this video, you might want to check the books available in our link in the description. There you'll find many fundamental marketing books in different languages. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more marketing-related content. See you in the next one.